Wake up! I'm Doug, and this is the Taste and Sensibility channel. Today on coffee number one, we are starting to explore something I've really liked and enjoyed for quite a long time. But unlike cheese or whiskey or honey, which are fairly recent explorations, me and coffee go way back. So I'll have to admit I have abused it in the past by making it out of old dead ground coffee and then scorching it on a burner for several hours. And then it's abused me by tasting all bitter and burnt and all those other things that people think they need to put in creamer and sugar for. But right now, because of some recent changes that I've made in my coffee routine, we are getting along great. And I'm enjoying lots of different kinds of coffees from all over the world. And today we'll be tasting this one from a single estate in Nicaragua. So I have ordered some unroasted green coffee beans from this place that supplies them, and they have a relationship with a certain grower. It's a single estate in Nicaragua. And I roasted the beans maybe 10 days ago, and then I ground the beans fresh today before I made this coffee in an automatic drip coffee maker. So I'm pouring it now to let it cool off a little bit. This is too hot to really taste well. You could drink it. It would get the caffeine into you, but you wouldn't be able to taste everything at this temperature. So we're going to let it cool off a little bit. So this coffee estate was really kind of deforested, war damaged property from the Sandinista days. After the chaos of the Sandinista rule, the two entrepreneurial women looked over this estate and said, we could rebuild this, we could replant it, and employ lots of people. And when they did all that, they found that they had a market with specialty buyers rather than just commodity markets. So they are selling their coffee at a higher price, probably treating their workers better and getting more money to rebuild and invest in the estate that they have there. So this is rich, medium-bodied, doesn't smell, really dark roast. It doesn't smell very dark. All those coffee notes and a lot of earthy notes sometimes in the darker roasts. I'll take a sip. There's a fruity aspect to it. And it's too hot to really taste, but I'm getting kind of a plum or red plum, black plum, peach kind of vibe from it. A little bit of brightness from acidity, which is good. It's good to taste that. So right now, while it's really hot and too hot to really taste carefully, I'm getting fruity things and a little brightness from the acidity. So I would say maybe 10 years ago, I was going out to Whole Foods or other places that had some fairly freshly roasted coffee beans out on display with a date, some kind of different labeling telling where they're from in the world, what kind of roast it was, what the roasting date was. And I would buy those, maybe a pound or less, and take them home and grind them myself. But I didn't really pay attention to how old they were, or how old they were once I got them in the house, and maybe take a month or two to grind it all, drink it all. And then I was in a good place right here where I am now in southern Louisiana, where I could make it with some soft water that didn't need a lot of treatment. We have a spring water source where I live, and you can just run it through the refrigerator filter and you've got some pretty good stuff. Maybe 20 years ago, I was doing kind of the same thing, buying beans that were roasted by somebody else at a fairly recent date and taking them home and brewing my own coffee, grinding it fairly fresh, probably every day, No, I think I ground ahead back then. Let's just do 2 weeks worth. And then I would make it with this hard water from the Mississippi River. And I liked it. It seemed okay at the time. As it cools off, it's getting a little richer, a little more body. I'm not just getting top notes, but I'm figuring out what's at the base and what's in the middle here. And it's pretty nice. It's got some like chocolatey notes, but they're light. They're not deep and dark and rich. They remind me of chocolate, but that's more like milk chocolate, light and nimble. What else is there? So let me go back a little further. 30 years ago, I was probably in a lab somewhere, in a chemistry lab, making daily coffee for me or some colleagues out of just ground coffee in a can and dumping in whatever water we had, some scoops, some cups, and making that and letting that sit on a burner for a while. And it was not good. So I know from good coffee shops, I knew back then, 10 and 20 years ago, and good coffee shops and good restaurants, you could get something that tasted much better than you could make at home, or than I could make at home. I always wondered why, what's the big difference? How is this happening? What do they know that I don't know? This is so good. The acidity is kind of spreading out or diffusing. I don't pick up. It's like a medium temperature now. I should bring the thermometer in here and just measure it, because I'm giving the notes. It's still, there's a brightness present, but it's not as standout or distinct as it was before. It's just melting into all the other flavors. So there's still a fruity set of notes. Can't really connect it to any one fruit. Peachy, plummy, some of those stone fruit things, apricot. Maybe, yeah. And maybe some nutty overtones, but what not, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm just fishing around for things that pop out at me. And it's a nice melded together mixture where there isn't any one thing that pops out, not even the acidity and the brightness that I got at first. Everything's just smushing together into this really nice, pleasant taste. So I am really enjoying this. So this is not the pattern that we'll be seeing on the other videos. There's a structure and a format I'm going to go with for the rest of them, and it does not look like this, but I'll explain more of that later. So I would say maybe 4 years ago, I had a visit with a friend in St. Louis. I was traveling to take them to different musical acts. And when she was serving me breakfast and coffee the next morning, she pointed out that she was doing her own roasting. And that got me looking into it. She said it was pretty easy to get the unroasted beans from lots of different places, and it was very interesting and fun to do. So I started looking into it, and that's what got me all charged up about coffee. Starting about 4 years ago, in maybe the middle of 2016. So in my investigations to make the coffee better, I found out I was doing so many things wrong that's worth the whole video right there. So video number 2 is going to be 5 things I was doing wrong when I stumbled upon a really good coffee brewing and making at home. So I'm not trying to make everybody into a home roaster. I'm just providing tools or resources where you can figure out how you can upgrade your coffee game, and telling my story about how I came across all these things. So, how's this doing? Warmer than it was before. Oh man, it's so good. Okay, this time, right out of the carafe, pouring it, I'm not getting the brightness that I got the first time when it was new. So maybe my palate's used to it, or it's acclimated to the acidity, and it's now that it's been all over my mouth, it's not a new, sudden, sharp thing. The interesting thing about roasting your own coffee is that you can buy 5 or 10 different kinds, so you can keep them around for a year or two. and they will not really change much. But once you roast it, you start a clock ticking where you need to use it up within I'd say 3 or 4 weeks. So I've got this nice rhythm in my routine now where I roast a couple batches a week. And I'm only doing about half a pound, but I've got a choice of, anytime I go into my pantry to make coffee, I've got a choice of 3 or 4 different things that I've roasted recently in the last few weeks. And I pull from one of those. And then when there's a little bit of leftover where it's not enough to make a whole pot like this, I blend things together. So I'm playing around and doing all sorts of interesting experiments on the side because of all the access to good coffees that I have available, several different kinds. So the real interesting thing about single estate coffees is basically terroir. It's like a good winemaker, a good vintner, pulling grapes from one spot on the earth. They usually represent that spot pretty well, and it's distinctive. Once you're a careful taster, it's distinctive from other places. So the label here on this is from Smokin Beans coffee, by the way. And this is a 2-pound bag that I recently purchased, mostly for the videos here, because I usually have too many and don't really need to order anymore. But this says it's from Nicaragua. The elevation of this particular estate, which they say Santa Rita Estate, is the source. They say the elevation is 1,100 to 1,350 meters. They give the varieties that they grow there. So 90% Caturra and 10% Caturra Margot type. I don't know what that means, but somebody does. So this is some kind of Arabica beans, and these are the varieties of Arabica that they are growing there. And then the region is called Jinotega. And the process is washed. They use jugs of water to knock the fruits off of the coffee cherries. Oh yeah, let's talk about this set here, because this is representing lots of parts of stuff here. So this bottom layer of the red things, I don't know if you can see, yeah, you can see the red, are the coffee cherries that have been picked, hopefully ripe ones, but every once in a while there's a yellow one that's not real ripe. But this is the fruit that they pick off the tree in these growing areas, and then they do some sort of processing. There's a natural fermentation, there's just washing with water jets and using force to get the fruit off, and when you do that you end up with unroasted beans that look like this. They can be a little tan, they can be a little green, yellow, brown, different things. So you can see that the color varies of the cherries, the color varies of the unroasted beans, and then when you roast the coffee, of course, the color varies. So there's darker ones over here, lighter ones over here. And that's what's represented in these some of these photos behind me. So I'm basically want to talk about the beans themselves and the roasting process, and then sometimes gear for making the coffee, and then just, your experience of drinking it every day. And then there's also the social aspect of a coffee house, a Starbucks, a place to meet people before COVID-19 shut down everything. So I was hoping to have a few videos of field work, going out and testing different things and tasting things in places, but we'll just leave that till the end of the series and see if anything changes by the time I'm done. Maybe we'll get to go out. So the social aspects of a coffee house is also very important. And while everyone's inside and doing stuff, we'll just act like we're socializing. One of the other resources that I want to give you is this book called Coffee Obsession by Annette Moldweyer. And this is most useful if you go out and buy unroasted beans, or you have access to selections of coffee beans from around the world. If you go to a roast, if you have a local roaster and they have 40 different kinds, you can probably find the different kinds in here because of all the maps and descriptions of regions. That's what I like about it. So they have sections on how they grow and process and gear, processes we do to brew it at home. But the part I like is the regional maps. So here's Ethiopia, here's the country, here's the coffee growing regions in green. And they have a few comments about each place. So in Ethiopia, I know about Irgachef. And they describe it and point to it where it is on the map. And I buy coffee beans from there frequently. So you go through with all the other coffee growing countries. They tell you how big they are in coffee production, what they use, kinds of beans that they grow, and where the regions are on a map. And then it's easy to know a little more about what you're drinking when you buy some of these. So I really like it. So let's do Central America, where we are today, Nicaragua. And here's the country, Nicaragua. And I know that this is from the region of Jinotega, which is right here, and pointing to this spot. Though it's the second largest department, Jinotega produces the most coffee, often high in acidity, but with a high, light texture. It displays cocoa and berry notes. Okay, so I got a little cocoa, a little bit of chocolate, I got some fruits, but it wasn't berries. So that's the kind of thing that this book goes through and tells you. So it's useful for geography lessons. So I just love it. I use it all the time. And I've been using it more and more for brewing methods or recipes and how to do things as I've prepared for this video series. So this label has a few tasting notes on it. It says medium body, mild acidity, clean cup, peach. So it's fruity and has some acidity. According to the label here, and I was able to find that, and it agrees with what we found in the book. So let me get back to coffee, because I really like drinking this stuff. It's the last little batch of roasted beans I had, so I'll need to roast more. So I'll put this in rotation, and in a week or two I'll have some more that sit around for 2-3 weeks while I use it up. One thing I don't often do is add cream to my coffee, but I'm going to do it here just to be a little different. That was probably too much. That was enough for a whole cup, and this is just a tiny cup. So I often add cream at restaurants when I know they have a deep, dark, rich coffee that I'm going to enjoy. It just seems more desserty and more final for the meal to throw in a little cream to it, and I like the cream taste. I just don't mess with it in daily life. I don't need it. I never add sugar. I seldom add cream. It's a desserty thing, a special thing, a restaurant thing. So some of the other resources I've come across are the George Howell videos on YouTube. They don't have an awful lot of views, but the guy is very knowledgeable. He started a coffee company in the 70s and 80s and kind of learned on his own. Lots of other people were learning on their own. And he's an industry pillar and really knows, and you can tell how much he knows and how comfortable he is with all that stuff. So I'll have a link to those videos down below, or maybe just the playlist on my channel to get you started looking at some of that stuff. And it impacts mostly on choosing beans from international sources and roasting them, but he goes into how to brew with different methods also. So that's very useful stuff. And then I watch a lot of videos from Seattle Coffee Gear. So all those links will be down below, and that's where I learned more about coffee and what I was doing wrong and how to do it right, or get closer to your ideal cup. So those are just some of the things I've come across. So like I said before, this video is not in any way the format or pattern for the rest of them in the series. So I am hoping to do 20-25 videos, all tasting a different coffee from different parts of the world. So I'm just going to go down in a southern direction from the United States and go through Mexico, Central America, South America, and have hopefully 3 or 4 coffees from each continent or region. And I'll go over to Africa and do 4 there. I'll do some in Asia, Indonesia, the Indian subcontinent. They're all over the place. Coffee growing regions are all over the world. It's been traded and grown and for centuries. So it goes back 500 years and more. So they've spread all over the world. Wow, that is so different. With the cream in there, it interacts with all the different parts very well. It's a good pairing. But I don't pick up the fruitiness so much. It emphasizes the milk chocolate notes. It definitely makes it more of a milk chocolate than it was before. So that's interesting. I like that. So future videos will have a little visit to some country in one of my roasting exercises, and I will try to give a careful tasting and my so-so tasting notes on each coffee and give you an idea of how the regions vary and what you might find in each place. And then hopefully I will add a little more information about 5 things I was doing wrong, or how to brew siphon coffee or pour over. I use automatic drip every day. That's my routine. I have 2 roastings a week in my routine, and it is boom, boom, boom. I don't spend a lot of time on coffee. I just brew it. I roast it. It takes 20 minutes to roast a batch. Some evening with partial attention, and some other evening at 20 minutes. While I'm doing something else, I can roast a batch of coffee, and then it's ready to go. It goes into the collection. There's 3, 4, 5 sometimes sets of beans that are roasted and ready to go. I can just do them neat, single ones, or I can blend them together and make some interesting thing. Every once in a while, I'll buy a bag of beans at a grocery store and throw those into the mix just to check my roasting skills and my tasting skills and seeing if everything's kind of lined up the way I thought they'd be. And very seldom do I buy grocery store coffee that's been ground already, but that happens too, and we will have some examples of that. So I will go through different brewing methods. I'll go through, I got an espresso maker recently, and I like espresso. The taste is wonderful. So it's definitely not this stuff, but the taste is good, and you can do several different things with it. So we'll have some of that. Other topics would be things like things that people put into the beans. You can buy Southern pecan flavored coffee. What's in there? How does that happen? You can buy decaffeinated coffee. How does that happen? Sometimes there's a whole set of things that people pour into it after they brewed it. You can add flavors then. You can add Irish whiskey, any whiskey. Pour it in there, coffee liqueurs. So we will do all sorts of checks on what foods, what spirits, what things go along with the coffees that we're talking about. So those will be the topics. So I'm awake. This coffee, I only drink 2 large mugs of coffee in the morning is my pattern, and then I don't really think about it for the rest of the day. If there's some nice restaurant meal in the evening, coffee would go there too. It does not keep me up at night. I don't restrict myself that way, but 2 in the morning is my pattern. So, an automatic drip, just regular coffee that most people would recognize, is my pattern too. But I'm gonna dabble in lots of other fields as we go through this video series. So that's what the future holds for this coffee video series. So come back for that.